Welcome everyone to Offchain Podcast. I'm Alex Romero, and
Many.
all right, there we go. So this is our first Offchain on-topic conversation. Even though we did have a previous episode to this one, we kind of went all over the map, just to kind of give you guys an overview of where it is that we're taking this. So today we're gonna do a Bitcoin Maxi episode. I think that's what we agreed on, right, Manny?
Yeah. So basically, we're going to talk about Bitcoin in 2022. So, like, in moving forward, where we've been and where we're going and where we're at right now. So,
Perfect. So, just to start off with very elementary things. So, just to clarify, crypto is not all classified as Bitcoin, even though Bitcoin is a crypto. Not all crypto is Bitcoin. So there are many other projects out there like Ethereum, like Cardano, like Avalanche, Polygon, and several other ones, including coins like Doge and Shiba Inu, which have made a lot of news lately. But that's not what this is about. This is about Bitcoin, and let's start, I guess, at the beginning, right? Bitcoin was introduced, 2008, 2009? Satoshi Nakamoto introduced his white paper to the market, and it kind of sent us down this weird spiral that we're in today, right?
yeah, definitely. Yeah, so it's, research about, kind of cryptocurrencies or decentralized finance were ongoing for years. And, like, I think we had a conversation earlier about kind of like the aftermath of the Great Recession and kind of like the financial service collapse and the real estate market collapse in 2009, 2008, around that time. And so, like, for me, I feel like that kind of gave everyone the incentive who were researching different forms of finance to actually make the push to actually create a new financial system. So yeah, it's not a coincidence that it happened right after the or right during the Great Recession and right after the financial collapse. It's like we saw that, we all suffered, and we all had to pay for it. It's like, and the people who created the problem didn't have to pay for it. They got big bonuses and bailouts, and the people who were paying them lost their houses, lost their livelihood, and yeah, so like we kind of realized that we really needed to do something different.
Yeah, it's almost like they got a promotion, right?
Yeah.
It's very strange how that works, but hey, what do I know? So, the introduction of Bitcoin itself, I know there's some like real gung-ho about Bitcoin, which, yeah, Bitcoin's a really big deal, actually. Bitcoin is our saving grace. It's what really is going to it's not what's going to help us get out of where we're at, but it's helping us get the understanding that we need to get to where we would all want to be, which is I believe we agreed on a Star Trek like utopia, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
So
and for me, like nowadays, I'm not really a big fan of Bitcoin. That's only because the industry has evolved, and I really in it for smart contracts and proof of stake systems and decentralized, software, dApps and everything, and DeFi. But at the time, for me, it had a big impact in the way I saw the world. And knowing, we're older millennials. So I know you say you're Gen X because you don't want to admit you're a millennial. But yeah, so we're at an age where we kind of saw previously what things were and how they worked. And then midway through our adult life, we had this crisis happen, and then we have Bitcoin invented, and we saw that something else is different. Different is possible. So, and for me, like in context of when Bitcoin was launched, like I got really into it. It was it was still the early stages, and there were a lot of problems. Like the network wasn't kind of built out yet, or it wasn't big enough to kind of handle the load of the global financial system. But it was a start.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So to that, I guess we could say that Bitcoin's introduction was more of an opportunity than the solution.
Yes, yeah. Proof of concept,
Proof of concept, absolutely.
yeah.
And so from there, that's that was a catalyst into what ended up becoming Ethereum and the advent of smart contracts. But we're gonna save that for a different episode.
Yeah, definitely.
So we talked about how traditionally speaking we hold gold as a commodity to be such a high valued asset, and they're calling Bitcoin digital gold because of its scarcity.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't
Deflationary
say,
nature, yeah.
right, and so I wouldn't say necessarily its utility because again we go back to uh, the use of Bitcoin itself, although it seems to be working out as a store of value, it still has its drawbacks with the inefficiencies of having a global network of computers that has to process all these transactions with the hash rate, and it's just not. It's a great proof of concept. Again, it's just not the most efficient based on our understanding of how things can be done today.
Yeah.
Um, but it's working so far, and at the very least what it would do is serve as a good point of entry in and out of fiat into crypto.
Hmm.
From there, I really don't know much more about what like how much more better it can get. Even the Lightning Network that was supposed to be its revamp really didn't do that much
Yeah.
of a big difference.
Yeah, this is where we're kind of running into like dangerous territory with like people who see Bitcoin as the only coin, that's worth investing in. And I understand their arguments, like people like to look at the scarcity and
Its scarcity.
yeah, exactly, having and I get it. Like if you invest in it, it's a pretty safe investment at this point, but it's like to kind of when it comes like new funds coming into the market, there's other places that will get you a better yield and can and will have like a better impact on the environment and build out different things. Like for when it comes to decentralized finance and smart contracts and decentralized systems, it's like you can do that with Bitcoin too, but it's always with kind of off-chain systems, and yeah. So at this point, um, it is kind of frustrating with like a large percentage of the big money investors in crypto who are just Bitcoin maxis, and they see everything else as shitcoins. Yeah, I understand it. It's like they have different. There's so many different communities within crypto, and they're in it for different reasons.
Right.
So it's because they have like the largest position and most money in it. They feel like their community is the strongest or best, or their
Right.
yeah, or their interests are the only ones worth catering to. So
Right. When in reality, all they did was create almost a demand for the market because they put so much money into it.
yeah,
That and not just that, like a lot of this has to go with understanding. If we take into account that um, people barely understand, let's start with traditional finance,
yeah,
right? And then you move into now digital currency, which has all these complex components or factors that make it so. And some people get it, some people don't. But then you add in smart contracts, and then you really start to lose people.
yeah,
And then
exactly.
they're like, smart contracts for maybe not so smart people. And it's not to put anyone down. It's just a matter of taking the time to really look into it, and wanting to. You have to want to understand. If
Yeah,
you really want to understand, believe me, you will understand because you want to. But if you really don't care, you're gonna have a tough time.
yeah,
You're gonna have a tough time. And the thing that I think is the most interesting is that this is a period of time where we don't have the luxury of not caring.
mhm,
We
yeah.
don't have the luxury of not wanting to learn new things. Otherwise, we're gonna get left behind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's you mentioned for me when I talk to people about crypto, I still do start with Bitcoin, because it's like you have to like explain to them why it was necessary and why it's not going away. It's like if you have like a new digital economy, you're not going to be actually using gold. Like we talked about earlier, digital gold. But you can't send a chunk of gold to Amazon to buy your whatever you need. It's like you need a
Uh,
new system that is more reactive to the digital world, and we see that with like Facebook and Meta and like all this conversation about the metaverse. It's like we're kind of evolving a different economy and have different priorities. Uh, so we couldn't have just kept just a purely fiat and central bank system. We need something else, you know, and like
Right.
Bitcoin was a really good step in that direction, but it's still evolving, you know. It's like, and I feel like right now we're at an inflection point in our economy. Like we're just starting with people realizing that this is what the future is. It's not just the, you know, toy that people on a weird side of the internet play with. You know, it's something that's going to be a part of everyone's life. It already is, but they just don't know it
Right.
yet. So, yeah. So it's, for me, like I still use Bitcoin as the example of, you know, I always tell the story of financial crisis, and it was born to fix those problems. But now we're kind of moving to a new dynamic where it's not only is it fixing problems, it's creating new opportunities. You know.
1,000%.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things that we did brush up upon earlier that we wanted to get to was talking about the cycles that it goes through.
Mm-hmm.
You know, right now it's really tough to say what's going to happen. I mean, although we can say what trends are showing, we really have nothing to gauge where it's going to go or how parabolic this may go. It also depends on, excuse me, it also depends on institutions and how much they decide to adopt this, because although they have recommended 10% into the portfolio, there's nothing that says that they won't up that into saying 25%.
Yeah.
Or even 30 or 40% of their portfolio, because they're trying to move for greater infrastructure.
Yeah, and I know there's also places around the world where they've already started to like tokenize, you know, stock. You know, so it's like there's gonna be assets that are tokenized that are not just. So your portfolio won't be like an exchange portfolio; it'll be a crypto portfolio. You know, that has stocks and coins. You know.
Right, and the way that they onboard their cash to do that would probably be through Bitcoin.
Definitely, yeah. And yeah, so like I think we had a conversation earlier about market cycles and specifically with Bitcoin. And yeah, I think it's interesting that, you know, people have a lot of price predictions about Bitcoin this cycle. And for me, you know, it's like, yeah, it's like I would never bet against it because of scarcity and the way the network works and the money flows coming in. But I don't really see it kind of going parabolic the way people really think it's going to. Because like, you know, this year or this last year, Bitcoin kind of lost its, you know, majority of its market cap. So like now a lot of money coming in, more money than not is going into other currencies than Bitcoin. I think right now Bitcoin's at 44% market dominance. So that means more, so for every dollar, you know, over 50 cents or 55 cents is going to Ethereum and, you know, smart contract systems and also NFTs. So that's not kind of factored into the market cap. But when you do, Bitcoin's dominance is even less than it, you know, even less than what it seems right now with 44%. So for me, you know, it's like, yeah, like the total market cap and the total industry will go parabolic, but not necessarily with Bitcoin as the leading, you know, gainer of, you know, capital, you know. Because I understand, you know, a lot of like the bigger, you know, money players in this game, the bigger whales, have a significant stake in Bitcoin, and so their perception is that Bitcoin will be the dominant, you know, currency. But for me, like I chase yield, so I rather put my money into, you know, future tech, you know.
Right, and then that's part of the gamble, which is why a lot of people that are Bitcoin maxis is because they get this one thing, they get that Bitcoin just makes total sense. So yeah, put my money in that.
Yeah.
Why? Because I just don't understand the smart contract system, and like it's a gamble because I don't know which one's gonna prevail.
Yeah.
Because there's gonna be a period of time when you know, just like what happened in 2016, 2017 with the ICO craze, when regulators went after all those people, and then it created market panic.
Yeah.
You know, like that's going to happen again when the dust settles, because the better, more efficient, more connected, more fluid, and all those pluses, whatever system has all those characteristics is going to be the system of the future.
Yeah, and I get it. You know, it's like for me, I'm, you know, kind of experienced trader, so I understand, you know, kind of the irrational exuberance when it comes to like right now with NFTs. I get why someone who's a Bitcoin investor would kind of scoff at, you know, all these NFT investments and smart contracts, because like it is a bunch of kids, you know, just playing around with money, making a lot of money for ugly art. Let's be honest, you know. So
pixel art.
Yeah. So I understand that, but you know, your distaste for the actual people who are investing in like kind of craziness of the industry can't blind you to the potential for those systems, you know.
Right.
And
It's
and I,
almost like a
yeah,
it's almost a distraction. Like look over here, but there's fake value. There's not real value there.
yeah,
It's just money that's over here in the NFT space, but the real value is over here, and there's no light being shed on it because, well, let's be honest. Whatever system does make it in this era, if it's not in the right hands and the right control, then people are not going to be so happy. But the majority of the people are going to benefit from this over here because decentralization is where we want to go. We don't want to have central control, a
yeah.
central command center, that kind of dictates how everyone's money is spent and what you do and where you're going and how you live your life.
Yeah,
That's not the future that we envision for everybody.
definitely. And for me, like I see it like, especially with the NFT craze, it's like you're getting a lot of cash flow and kind of capital investment for infrastructure. Even though I don't like the end result of like the actual NFT, I know eventually those NFTs would have a lot of utility. But at least right now, the money is flowing to new developments within the crypto space. So like those people who start these projects, some of them are just doing it to cash out, others are doing them to actually build networks. And the fact that money's flowing to them, they can invest that back into infrastructure, and that
Absolutely.
will lead to the future, like future dApps and future, you know, different applications for crypto.
Right. And by dApps you mean distributed applications for
Yeah.
all the laymen
Yes.
that aren't too savvy with the lingo yet.
Yeah, definitely.
And we also wanted to touch upon the regulation within this space. There's a few things that kind of came up. The 1.2 trillion dollar infrastructure bill that was passed on Friday, November 11th, at the Senate. I believe it was to the Senate. And yeah, I mean that's a pretty big deal. There's some kind of concerns in the crypto space for those things happening, but I believe that the provisions don't take place until January 2024.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of things in there that I found interesting, which was how I believe it was a 1099B, that it's a form that brokers are going to have to basically file on behalf of their customers to the IRS for any transaction over $10,000 in cash equivalency. And including there was well, so to that being said, there's a couple of concerns, which is what happens if you move your money from the exchange to a private wallet. Then exchanges don't have a way to report that, and they don't know how much money you lost or how much money you earned. So it's really not going to be an accurate form of measurement. It seems to me like this is just some desperate attempt at trying to keep tabs on how much money you actually have and or making and where it's going. So again, it's just part of the surveillance state type of agenda.
Yeah. Well,
That's just my opinion.
yeah. For me, like, I feel it's like it's more it's the regulator's job is to regulate, and they're not going to just sit back and allow this to happen without them trying to kind of take a little bit of their power back. But we know that it's kind of naive and it's not going to work, and there's not even kind of clear guidance legally if they even have the authority to do it, because the networks is international. It's like they
It's borderless.
yeah, and for me, it's like everything's negotiation. Like they're gonna push this bill, and then we as a crypto industry should also kind of organize to kind of push our own agenda. It's like for me, it's like it's more of a rallying call. And when I heard about it, I heard the provisions, and it was kind of worrying to me. But when I actually looked at it, then and the effect it had on kind of influencers within the space, like I'm not so worried anymore. It's like it's kind of just like beginning of that kind of negotiation with the government to create a framework for regulation. It's like I do. I don't really think the government should regulate crypto. We should be self-regulating, and like that's evident with like a lot of these rug pull scams, and it happens every week. There's a new one. It's like people are losing a lot of money who are not really savvy with like smart contracts or how these coins are structured and how liquidity works, and so people have been losing a lot of money. And for me, I know that I know how to avoid that, And for me, it's more, everyone for themselves, but I understand why the government would want to jump in and say, I want to protect consumers, So I understand like that push towards regulation, but for us as an industry, we should educate regulators on the actual technology. It's like, because I know that those people don't have no clue about technology. It's like they're using older rules for money laundering for crypto,
Right. They're trying to apply centralized prompts to decentralized. Sorry, they're trying to apply centralized solutions to decentralized problems.
Yeah, and I understand that. It's like you have your expertise and you're siloed within your job, so it's like you're going to approach it from a certain angle.
Right,
it's like
because you don't know any better.
Yeah, and it's no secret that the beginning, especially with Bitcoin, it attracted a lot of people who are more libertarian minded, more not really anti-government, actually more maybe small government. So it's like at this point, it's like we can say, yeah. So we say, government should stay out, But like I think we had this conversation before. It's like I wish people took more responsibility for themselves and realized that they are the government. Like if we all band together, we are the government, and if we leave it to other people, then their interests will be kind of taken into account rather than ours. So the libertarians need to kind of step up and help us fight
Right,
in practical
and
ways.
and not violent either. And there's such things as peaceful protest, by the way.
The marketplace of ideas.
Absolutely. And earlier today, that podcast I shared with you was with Andres Antonopoulos and Emin Guerrer and a couple other folks that were from the Harvard Law. That was a really great podcast for DeFi, which I think we should totally include the link in the bottom.
Yeah.
So we'll do that. And then that'll kind of help brush some people up onto like where the space is kind of heading, at least from the view from professionals that have been doing this for a very, very long time.
Yeah, and it's like just so we don't kind of go into like topics that were there that people don't have context for. But like, there's one thing that kind of relates to what we're talking about right now. It's because like we have to be kind of aware. Like I love I decided to dedicate the rest of my career to crypto, and I'm really kind of optimistic about the technology. But I do realize that a lot of the use cases and are not ready. It's like, and the early kind of beta versions of those use cases will have flaws and it will break and people will lose money. It's like, so I understand needing some kind of arbitration or some way to kind of recover funds, or people who you can't just tell someone, oh, you're SOL. But when they're new, if you want to try to convince them that this technology is something that they should really be investing in, so we do need to take care of them. For us, if you lose, on a scam, like I would say you're SOL, because like I know that what you're talking about, and like it's your personal responsibility. But if I want to convince someone who's new, I don't want them to have those bad experiences, because then they kind of throw it away and they lose opportunities.
Absolutely, and it leaves a bad taste in your mouth, and basically, you get scared to jump into something new. And the reality is that these are times to take the risks, and I don't mean put the farm on crypto, but definitely take some of your assets and dabble and just play around with it. Just get yourself exposed to it and start reading and tune into Offchain, because we're going to be covering a lot of different topics and going into different protocols and what those white papers entail. And we're even working on our own project. We have a project called UCAT. We're working on it. It's a project for education and academia, and we'll be getting into more of that in the near future.
Yeah, and like in this case of kind of crypto scams, I do have to admit that it's not on the Bitcoin side; it's on the smart contract side. So I think that's one point for the Bitcoin maxis, is that like Bitcoin is simple. It's more transactional, and it's hard for someone to break it if you organize yourself right. If you have your private keys locked down and maybe off chain or off exchanges, then you're probably safe. When you do kind of work with smart contract systems, there are many more kind of like levers and points of failure. So that's what creates some problems. So at least with Bitcoin at this point, it's tried and tested, and there's certain things you should do and certain things you shouldn't do, and those are kind of well established. So
Right.
there's 1 point for Bitcoin.
1 point for Bitcoin. All right.
Yeah.
So that's for the soundboard. We have to add that one.
Yeah.
And also, one of the things that I found fascinating was, even though this is a really amazing time for Bitcoin and for the crypto space, why is China opting out of this? It blows my mind.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's I think it's more they're going. I think the pandemic hit them pretty hard, and they're going through a lot of like multiple troubles. They had environmental troubles, and now they have economic, and of course the pandemic troubles. So it's like
And I know that their weather hasn't been that great either. They've been getting flash floods and all kinds of crazy
yeah,
things.
and also like coal shortages and power shortages, and so for me it's just like the government kind of taking more power and control over the people. Um, just to because if they don't take the power, people will take the power. So and I know it's like we see regulation in the United States when like a very small amount when it comes to crypto, but there they have more authoritarian control over the kind of legal structure. So here, like there are concerns about money laundering with crypto and crypto scams, and it's the same there too. It's like a lot of people will try to get their funds out of the country, and also basically do some money laundering and not pay taxes and all that. So they're really trying to kind of clamp down on just the flight of funds. And I know they're also trying to launch their digital yuan, so they want control over that digital currency and without any competition. And when you're in a country that has kind of a high level of authority and control, then you can do that type of thing. It's not good in the long run for the industry, but that's the only way I could see the reason why they're doing it is because they had basically a very strong position in the crypto world when it comes to like the majority of mining and all the patents for the miners.
Don't they have like all the patents in Bitcoin mining hardware?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and also that's where they manufactured everything. We literally get secondhand miners. So they wouldn't give that up if they didn't have a plan that created more value than they had with being having a hegemonic position within the Bitcoin industry.
Right. Well, let's be honest. I mean, even though they have all that, the whole process of just mining period is not efficient.
No, not at all.
So it's interesting. I guess maybe they realize that it's not necessary to mine Bitcoin because there's more efficient ways to do it, and so they banned it so that people wouldn't go down that route of creating these massive data centers that are just destroying our environment.
Yeah, and also it's like the decentralized factor. Even though like I don't believe Bitcoin is decentralized, there's only a few mining pools, and like it's at this point it wasn't designed to really kind of maintain a decentralized system. It kind of like congregated into more centralized, kind of a structure. But like so a hypothetical digital yuan within China, like what kind of architecture would be most advantage to a government that wants complete control? It'd probably be like a permissioned DPoS system. So if they do launch like a digital, sovereign currency, then that's probably the structure they would use. And if they have like a decentralized Bitcoin, then it's direct competition and it's not under their control. So
well, watch them use some sort of like microchip sensor that you have to like implant.
yeah.
It's like, sorry suckers.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have a choice.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting because it's like I think we talked this before. It's because like the United States and China, like this we've had the largest economies in the world, and I think like combined we have kind of a majority of economic output, and so we were successful in the old system, so we would be slowly adapt and give up the reins to a new system. It's like, why would we do that if we already have control, we already have everything we want,
Right. Well, I think that's part of the reason why the regulators are kind of like dragging their feet on making decisions, because if they make one wrong move, they stifle innovation. They push all these innovators to go somewhere else, and then they lose the race because they want to be there first.
Yeah, definitely. And I really believe that within the next like 30 years, it's like government it will become less important globally. It's like a slow death for governments and their control over segments of the population.
Right. And to add, by the way, that wasn't by design, meaning like I don't think that they would have ever put themselves in a position where they could out themselves. But again, like Andres Antonopoulos said, we can't just pretend that decentralized currency didn't happen. It's here, it happened, and so now we have to deal with the consequences of that, which is basically our freedom.
Yeah, it's hard to put a tiger back in the box.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. So these are really exciting times. I think that people don't really understand that the future, a future of abundance is just around the corner, and all we have to do is kind of hang tight and just kind of, it's going to be real bumpy.
Yeah.
It's going to be a real bumpy transition because, sometimes people just don't want to let go of power and control when it's not within their power and control anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, I always say all the time, it's like we actually already live in a world of abundance. It's just like the structures that we built before keeps the product of our work from us. It's like, and once we build these different systems, we can have more efficiency and take value from our work. More value.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of the things to really keep in mind is that the media that exists today, those are all built on power structures that basically founded the financial systems that we have today, and so
they interplay with each other. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's in their interest to keep the human perception, to think of a world of scarcity, because he who controls the mind of the human or of the people controls their output or controls their decisions to some degree, because you think that you don't have a choice. You're living within this matrix that you have around you, but it's all like a dog and pony show, as they say.
Yeah. And especially with crypto news, it's like it's more fun to talk about the people, talk about Squid Game rug pull than it is about someone who created something of value and took control of their life, So it's like, those headlines are more, people would click on that, and clickbait, really,
Clickbait.
Yeah, they make money and influence you for their own benefit, so.
Absolutely. And all they do is take you further away from the truth.
Yeah.
Right, which is one of the things we talked about just yesterday, how you take 7 billion people and you alter their perceived reality by just 1 degree, a percentage of a deviation, but you do that over the course of weeks and months and years, and eventually what you do is you've completely altered the reality of every human being on the planet that's exposed to your garbage that you're putting out in the brain drain media.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like having throwing a rock in a pond and the ripple turns into a giant wave, Yeah, it just like snowballs and grows, and even though it's like just tiny perceptive differences and influence someone just a tiny amount can have giant effects across, 7 million people. And I think like that's also kind of like why we're doing this as well, It's like, I think we talked about, it's like what's possible in the future, we can go one route rather than the other, We can either
Absolutely.
go, live in the matrix, or we can live, exploring the stars, We can live in utopia or dystopia. And it comes down to who's willing to work harder, people who are, know what's possible and are willing to work for it and won't compromise our beliefs, or someone who takes the easy route just to get a quick buck and would rather have full control of people and rather than them being free,
Absolutely, yeah. And that comes down to choices and decisions, and a lot of the people that choose the easy route, they choose the easy route because they're lazy. Let's just be honest. Like they really just don't want to put in the work or the effort.
Yeah.
And then you have people like, and I'm not gonna praise him too much, but like people like Elon and like Jeff Bezos, who we have some beef, but that's a separate issue. All these people that are doing some really interesting and amazing things, like they put in really hard work. I promise, like their achievements were not easy by any stretch.
Yeah, I know. It's like Bitcoin maxis. Come on, like it's like try to upgrade the protocol. Bitcoin could be cool again.
Absolutely. Make Bitcoin great again, right? Like we're making America great.
Yeah, because like for me, it's like one of the things behind it. It's like people, it's like for me, like I can swim, but it took me years to learn how to swim. and it's like it's really hard to let go of the side of the pool, you know, because you're not confident in your ability to swim. And for me, with like people who just invest in Bitcoin, it seems like they always come back to fiat. It's like they'll invest in it, but their goal is to be back in fiat. You know, but my goal is to never have to come back to fiat. Like I wish I could live in a world where everything I do is with crypto. You know,
Right. Where you never have to touch a dirty dollar or penny again.
exactly. Yeah.
You know, everyone's so worried about the pandemic and the spread of viruses. And guess what? You changing dollars and bills is getting you sick too.
Yeah. No, it reminds me of the first, you know, like, I think it was 4 months into the pandemic. I went to like a restaurant and I tried to hand someone a bill and she looked at me like I was crazy. Yeah.
Like, we don't want your cash.
Yeah.
And if you look around, I mean, people are pushing the cashless thing, which again we could say that it's part of the agenda and the big plan, right? To push this cashless, because if in your mind you're saying, oh well, I don't need these dollars anymore or this change in my pocket. Again, it's conditioning your mind, right? They're conditioning your mind to accept the reality in the future that's coming.
Yeah. Yeah. But for me, you know, it's like and I think we had a conversation about gold and, you know, like wanting something physical. And I'm someone that doesn't believe. Like I'm a big gold skeptic, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because you said we can't send Amazon a chunk of gold to buy something. Right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, also it's just like, you know, a lot of people who are really into gold, they have this fantasy of the society collapsing and they need to be using gold again, you know, like, and it's complete
Right.
fantasy. Like you said earlier, like once you have an idea, it's hard to go back. And
Right.
we know, you know, in our financial systems, like what's the best way or better ways to structure, you know, transactions and to engage in commerce. And I don't see us going back. Even if society were to collapse and we want physical things, I think gold isn't going to be it. You know, I'd rather have,
Right.
you know, farming tools. I'd rather have potash. You know, I'd rather have, you know,
Or a gun.
Exactly. Yeah, lead.
Yeah, because if society collapses,
Yeah.
trust me, we're gonna have some really big problems.
Yeah, I'd rather have fertilizer tools, you know, gun making equipment, you know. That's what actually has value, has utility. And
Right.
brings us to, you know, crypto again. Like, for me, that's what gives it its value, is its utility. So,
Right. And for you Bitcoin maxis, let's just be honest, it doesn't really have much utility.
yeah.
You know, I mean, it just doesn't. And you know, with whatever happens in the future, and one of the things that I wanted to kind of add, if and when interest rates take a hike, because they're gonna go up, and it's just around the corner, folks. Just so you know, like they said they weren't gonna raise until 2022. Well, they've been revising that now for months, and they're actually saying it's gonna happen probably towards the beginning of next year.
Yeah.
So right now, what's happening? Enjoy your rally, guys, because by the end of the year, I would say we're gonna have a pretty big dip.
Yeah.
So right now, I think we're about to hit irrational exuberance. If we're not already there, we'd have to check. I believe it's the glass node to see how that's going, but we haven't yet worked out all those kinks on how to add all these different slide stuff while we're doing the podcast. Or at least I haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah. And it's, you know, like I was looking at like the, you know, kind of Bitcoin cycles when it comes to, you know the happenings, and then how that affects the price over time, and we're basically mid-cycle, and usually it rallies into this time of, you know, the cycle, you know. So like I mentioned earlier, we did have a rally, but for me, a lot of the cash coming into the industry, like even from like a, you know, cultural perspective, their focus is not on Bitcoin. So I think like that's kind of taken a lot of the wind out of the sails of Bitcoin, is the fact that most of the money coming in now is coming from retail investors and younger people. And they're doing it for crypto games, they're doing it for NFTs, and just because it's cool, you know. Their influencers are like shilling coins, you know. So like right now, Bitcoin is becoming the boomer coin, you know. Yeah.
Right. And I think that one of the things that we'll see is its value with the amount of I guess with the trend on how much value actually is going into it. I think we'll see a big jump in the near future, where we'll probably have some more influx of institutional money that decides to probably, you know, up their percentages on their portfolio. But also one of the driving factors, the price is going to be the inflation. So as inflation kicks in and the purchasing power of our dollar diminishes, it's going to further drive the price of cryptos up too.
Yeah, yeah, and I was going to mention, yeah, that's where I see as well in 2022 is that like, you know, I think like the traditional finance industry is right now kind of admitting defeat. You know, like a lot of companies right now in their kind of investor calls are talking about crypto, and we're at a point where people realize that if they don't have a plan, they're going to be left behind. So I do see like a lot more institutional investment, and given you know, just like the tendencies of larger institutions and their fiduciary responsibility to put their money into solid investments, Bitcoin is the one that they're going to put it into. You know,
Yeah.
but given like the price movements, like you know, Ethereum is not very far behind when it comes to that level of investment. You know, like it's a solid investment. So I do see, you know, them also investing in Ethereum, and I know that when it comes to business, they're going to want to jump in on the DApp, you know, DeFi craze. So because it just increases the total bandwidth of the global financial industry, from traditional finance to new finance. You know, so yeah, I do see institutional money coming in, and I do see a rally coming, but I don't think it's going to be parabolic like previous rallies. The total amount of money coming in is going to be parabolic, but it's going to be split between, you know, Bitcoin and smart contract blockchains and NFTs. You know, I haven't really seen, you know, kind of like a metric for, but I know it's probably out there for the amount of money coming in NFTs. So I think that's probably like a metric that we should follow moving forward, just to see like where the industry is if you are an investor and want to know, you know, like
Where the money's going?
Yeah, where the money's going, and if it's a good time to invest, you know. And also, this is not financial advice. Like, this is just our opinion, and
Thanks for that.
yeah, this is what we think is going to happen, you know.
Right. Yeah. And I think that even with that, where the money is going, you know, again, there's no way to gauge exactly how much money is going to come into this because we're in unprecedented times. So right now, it's really tough to say. But I don't know. Do you have a number in mind as far as like what the call is for this current cycle? What the top's going to be? Just for fun and games, you know.
125, I'd say that.
You think we're top out at 125?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of a safe bet, you know. It's like I know we recently were close to 75,000, and I know that's probably like a resistance point. So we'll touch that, come back down, and then the next rally is going to break through that, probably go up to like 125, 150. And then from there, you know, it's like I know previous rallies, I think we talked about this before, is that like it was kind of, you know, stopped by the limitations of the networks. You know, like right now we see that with Ethereum, even though they are doing network upgrades, you know, transactions are ridiculous right now. You know, send coins like $40. You know.
Yeah, I tried to send like $10 worth of Dai, and it was like $130 fees. I was like, I thought you guys solved the problem.
Exactly. I was promised low gas fees. You know. Yeah. So it's like at some point, it's, you know, I have a decent amount of money, made a decent amount of money, so I don't mind paying the gas fees. But at some point, it's ridiculous. You know.
Yeah.
And it's not really useful. It doesn't have the utility that it's supposed to have. And that's usually, for me, like when it's rallies, then the fees go up, gas goes up, and you hit a roadblock. And then the next cycle they improve, and we have like more, you know, TPS and more people that can, you know, networks get stronger, more robust, and you could do more things, you know. And then we test the limit again, and then yeah. But pretty soon there'll be no limit. And that's when we know, you know, it's here forever.
When the floodgates open, right?
Yeah.
And it's just that's when you know, like, okay, when the floodgates open, you know it's late, because then that's when you pretty much like didn't buy yourself into or out of the game.
Definitely.
So right now is a really great time to jump into this stuff and start dabbling and taking just small risks, you know, just to get your feet wet.
Yeah, but you know, I probably should mention this. Like for me, I actually like the rally periods less than the bull markets less than the bear markets. Because for me,
well, I mean, I think everyone can agree with that.
No, I like the bear markets more than bull.
That's when you make your money.
Yeah, that's when I make my money. That's when I do my work. That's when you can have the space to actually build things that are cool, and then the rallies, like, people jump in and it gets kind of crazy for a while, and people kind of like, kind of, it's like the worst part of crypto. It's like you have the crazies come in.
Right. People who just made a crap load of money and then there's this blowout and then they're like, money never went in, and then bear market comes and like, shit, why did I spend all that money?
Yeah. No, but for me, it's like I'm here to build things that are useful and build economy. So it's like it's a time where you can really kind of see with clarity, about what's going to happen, and it's a time to learn. It's like, for us, like, our project is about education. So if you miss this rally, like, it's all right. Like, you will have other opportunities, and it's a time to learn the most you can about something, and then you know where to put your money, and it's almost guaranteed you'll see increase in value.
Absolutely, and I would say, that if the people aren't really in the game yet and they're kind of on the fence still, that's fine. I'm like, right now is probably not a good time to jump into it because we are entering an unprecedented territory, and with what's happening in geopolitics, with also our, what was it, the debt ceiling that we recently extended from October to December. That's going to be real interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to add on a comment on that.
Yeah, for me, like, I kind of went all cash right before the debate on the debt ceiling, because, like, you want to buy them on bottoms, not tops, and we've seen a lot of rallies, and given kind of like the headwinds in the economy when it comes to like kind of global problems with like China, having electricity shortages and environmental problems and the pandemic, and also our debt ceiling fight, given that people just, we're 1 year away from midterm elections, which is pretty contentious, and people just want to injure each other. They don't really care about the effects on the economy. So October, before, debt ceiling, we're about to like default, I kind of just went out cash because, like, there's a lot of, like, uncertainty in the economy. So I don't like, trading with uncertainty. So now we're kind of in a lull, because they push it to December, so it's not as, risky now, but there's still, anything could happen. We could still default in December,
And then this, and I wouldn't say it will happen in December because it's going to happen before they vote on this. It's going to happen December 16th is the day that they're voting.
Yeah.
Which is actually interesting because December 16th was when Bitcoin reached its all-time high. The last bull market, or the last bull cycle.
Yeah, definitely. And for me, it's like, it's always too risky because, like, just, offhanded comments by someone that might, most misspoken, can be extrapolated into policy. Like, people believe what happened, so things can move in any direction. So I generally kind of, go cash or just do, like, stablecoin LPs. But yeah, I would kind of wait for trend. Yeah, there's if you invest in, like, kind of smaller coins that kind of don't have a lot of use right now that will have in the future, like, I generally do that as well. But yeah, I would say be cautious right now. But there's also potential for a rally that can come out of nowhere, but we just don't know. And with uncertainty, it's not good to make significant decisions, so.
Right. I mean, the smart thing would be, like, even though there's a rally expected, we also know there's an expected crash coming.
Yeah.
So with that, I would say don't risk losing it on the rally if the crash is around the corner, because you just won't know when to pull out.
Exactly.
So coming in late into the game, you run the risk of losing more than you put in.
Yeah, especially with, like, if you're an investor in NFTs, it's like there's new projects coming up every single week. And, there's potential for, scarcity is a big, motivator, or something that moves price, very effectively. So, that's why Bitcoin is so popular. So with NFTs, there isn't any scarcity. And when you kind of invest in something, there's a potential, especially with NFTs, it's all paper value. And if you lose, you have that kind of, emotional injury. And if enough people have that, then that is kind of a catalyst for a drop in price.
Markets.
Yeah, then people lose faith in the value of those things, and it's huge potential for that. So there's any moment between now and, the debt ceiling debate, there can be enough emotional injury and loss that will snowball into a bear market. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
I would watch out.
This is your warning.
Yeah, so like I know we both kind of we like smart contract systems and different like POS networks, but at this point it's like so probably point number two for Bitcoin is if I were to stay in a crypto right now, it probably would be something like Bitcoin because it has much more stable price movements, and if you just want crypto exposure, then it's a decent safer investment, I believe, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a few protocols that we never really got into this conversation, but there are a few protocols that are spawned off of the Bitcoin protocol, right? So we have Bitcoin Cash, we have Bitcoin SV, I think it
Yeah,
was,
Satoshi
something like
Vision.
that.
Yeah,
Oh, what was it?
Satoshi Vision,
Oh,
Bitcoin and
got
SV.
it.
Yeah.
I never knew what the SV stood for.
Oh yeah. Well, it's they were created during the fight. I think it was the block size way back in the day. I think 2014 around there. Yeah, it was like
Oh,
Craig Wright and I think.
and they created the fork because they wanted a bigger block size, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Got it.
And that's kind of like we talked earlier about community of Bitcoin and
Or the lack thereof.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there is a community, but there isn't at this point. There really isn't a way for people to kind of upgrade the protocol because like the mining pools and most of the network is controlled by a few mining pools, and
Right.
there isn't really a
Incentive to change.
exactly or political will to actually get anything done. And if someone does want to upgrade the network and
Make changes.
yeah, it's almost impossible for them to do it at this point.
Right. I mean, it would cost more money than there actually is in the actual Bitcoin market
Yeah.
just to be able to buy enough computing power to be able to revert any changes that you need to make.
Definitely. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So,
So,
if you're, if you're
One
interested
point for smart contracts.
exactly. Yeah. So if you're interested in investing in, Bitcoin in 2022, this is kind of like ancient history for Bitcoin, but it's relevant. Like I remember, I joked earlier about, if I want to teach someone about Bitcoin, I got videos from 2014 I could show you, and they're basically as relevant today as they were back then, because like there hasn't been any changes to the network. Maybe Lightning Network, but it's not really that big of a deal,
No, not at all. I mean, the reality is right now we're hitting actually blockchain 3.0 is actually we're actually even heading into maybe 4.0, 5.0, but we need to get you guys to understand blockchain 1.0, which is Bitcoin,
Yeah.
to have just some understanding so that we can introduce blockchain 2.0 with smart contracts, which will be a following episode of our podcast, and then going into blockchain 3.0 with all the nodes and validators and all these other really neat functionalities of what these innovators have put together. But like even Cardano and all of its innovation with having created its system with the Haskell programming language,
Yeah.
and how it just so happens that it's also the language that financial systems use.
Yeah, and
So
for me, I'm really into it because it's like they're building for the future. It's not flashy. It doesn't catch headlines, but that's on purpose. It's like we want
Right.
to build things, infrastructure for the next 100 years, and that's what my goal is. And hopeful, if we educate people, they can also benefit from, it's like that knowledge and take it into their financial life in the future.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're gonna wrap this one up because we got into some pretty heavy topics there, and we're almost coming up on an hour, so I don't want to make this exhaustive. I don't know if you want to have any closing thoughts or any closing statements.
Not really. Well, you go first with your closing statements. I might think of something.
Okay, well, yeah. So I mean, definitely wrap this up. I think Bitcoin is going to be, as we get closer to 2022, there's another halving happening in 2022, which I don't expect it to be too much of a crazy rally. But again, with all the things happening geopolitically, I would definitely keep an eye out for some price action in maybe the early parts of next year. And in the meantime, just do your homework. Take time to really read into this I guess you could say, into what's happening in the world around you. You know, really start to take some interest into what's happening in the economy, into what regulations or regulators are trying to do with the space, and it's really like a puzzle that you have to piece together. But we're going to try and do our best to help you put those pieces together so you can make sense of everything. It is a lot to take in, and we definitely don't want to scare anyone away from the opportunity. I think that if you consciously understand, or you tell yourself that it's going to take some level of effort, and it's almost like it is like going back to school again, and that's okay. Like you might be older and you may not feel like you have the capacity to learn something new, but you do. So you know, it just takes effort. It just takes the want and the will to do it, and you can totally pick this up. And if there's questions that you have, believe me that people have answers. Just you have to take the effort to ask the question. You know, it really doesn't take much. It just takes just a little bit of effort, and you'll be able to put the pieces together, and hopefully your life improves.
Yeah.
You know, so I say that, and just keep fighting the good fight. You know, don't give up. You know, a lot of things are going to be happening around us that are out of our control, and that's okay. You know, we're not supposed to control everything around us, and some things will rise and others will fall, and it's it's all part of the cycle that we all experience. We all experience the ups and the downs. And all we can say, or all I can say to you, is think of the most difficult time of your life that you've ever experienced. Well, if you're watching this today, look at, you know, it might be now, but you're here today, and we'll get through this too, you know. And so it just, you know, it's definitely some tough times, and I know people are going through a lot right now. So my heart goes, and my my thoughts and prayers go out to everybody that's going through it, you know, and just keep the faith, and know that there's people working really hard behind the scenes to try and fix the problems that we have today. And it's not an easy fight, because the less that people understand and know about what's happening around us, the harder it is for us to really fix things.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I think, like, if you're new, to crypto, it's like I still meet a lot of people who are just getting into crypto, and I personally kind of bash Bitcoin a lot, but I do remember, like the beginning of crypto, and like how the effect it had on me, and it is a really good start for people. Like, you have to understand those concepts; they're very foundational. So yeah, I would start with Bitcoin. It's like, and if you're an investor and getting into it, like, it is a good start as well, because it's like, for everything that I like, about smart contract systems and blockchains, Bitcoin's predictable. It's like the concepts are easier to understand, and it's more stable. Because it's had over a decade of use, and it's still here.
Well, institutional money going into it is kind of your green light, saying, well, if they're putting their money into it, they're not going to just all simultaneously pull out at the same time.
Yeah, because I think it wasn't until, I would say, like 2017 is when it kind of changed to where people started realizing that it's not going to go away, and people kind of gave up, because it wasn't always, people were saying, oh, it's going to be here for a little bit, it might kind of fade away, but now we knew that it's going to stay here forever, for a long time. And so it is a good investment. Like, it's, even though pretty soon, I think another crypto is going to flip Bitcoin as the number one spot, but it's still going to be in top 10 for decades, I believe. It's like, it's never going to lose its position, because people do. It's not really good for currency. It's good for store of value. So it will be like gold. It will be like reserve currency, for a lot of like crypto portfolios. And yeah, so it's a good start. And if you're going to invest, don't invest more than you can lose. It's traditional, good advice, and learn everything you can about the thing you're investing in. Take more control over your financial life, because like the future is decentralized, and decentralization means you have to trust yourself and your knowledge. So before it's centralized, you have to trust the banks and government and
the system.
Industries. Exactly.
That's the system.
Yeah. So like now you're the one who's in control. You're the one who's the
Right.
bank.
You're the system.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's everything I have. So yeah.
Cool. Well, in the meantime, everyone, if you have any questions, please feel free to comment below or send us messages through our social media handles, which we will also add to the bottom of the description of this video. So take care of yourselves and each other, and we're out. Have a nice one.